And we are going to talk, nothing like Sean having you on the night after an Arizona UCLA game. And for those that don't know, I am an Arizona Wildcat, but I was also an Arizona Wildcat that had to check into the hotel in Tucson under an assumed name once because the Arizona fans didn't like me.
Yeah, you probably deserved it. You probably deserved it.
I'm sure I did. I don't know what I said. I actually thought I'd done Sean and said the team wasn't that good to help you out. But in turn, they were killing me. So anyway, UCLA beats Arizona in round 1 at Pauley Pavilion late last night. It was number 3 UCLA against number 7 Arizona. I still wasn't sure how good this Arizona team was because they hadn't beaten a gauntlet of teams. They won at Illinois, but other than that, it had been kind of a ho-hum kind of schedule, especially in the Pac-12. Kirk Kriisa really, really struggled, Sean. And UCLA had a lot of dudes. Listen, Pauley Pavilion had people in it again. It's a home court advantage. I saw it against Villanova. So when was the last time, Sean, that Arizona UCLA, because when I was there, listen, Don McClain, we had dudes playing.
Yeah.
You know, I'm aging myself a little bit. Randolph's laughing because he knows we're kind of the same. All of us are in the same age bracket. When was the last time we had a game like this between Arizona and UCLA, Sean?
Well, when we had Lowry Markkinen and they had Lonzo Ball, I mean, that was very similar to last night's game. It really was. I mean, if you count it up today, we have more information today. I think you have 9 players that played in that game that are in the NBA or have played in the NBA. I mean, TJ Leaf, Aaron Holiday, Lonzo Ball, you know, Lowry Markkinen on our end. We had a very, very good team. But that's when those 2 programs are at their finest, you know, that's when the Pac-12, I think, is also at their best. And last night we saw it. You know, in fairness to UCLA, Randolph, can you imagine, you know, you're in the East and you're calling ACC games and you're around. I mean, it's one thing to have no fans, but I think it's a completely different dynamic when you have fans and you play road games with fans, and then they take those fans away from you and you have no fans. Like that, to me, that's a completely,
you're all screwed up.
That's like a completely different deal. And,
it's a tease.
And in fairness to UCLA, and Oregon beat them, but for those guys to play that game with no fans and just me watching it, it's terrible. Last night, Arizona played in front of Pauley Pavilion. They played in front of that crowd that you would associate that type of game with. And look, here's the thing about it. Azuolas Tubelis was probably 50%. I think you have to really factor that that's real. He wasn't himself. Arizona was on a long trip. They played at Stanford, at Cal. That was their 3rd game in 7 days on the road. And let me tell you this, UCLA is really good. At the beginning of the year, when we started this, Jeff, I was talking about UCLA to the point where you guys were getting irritated with me. But I'm telling you, Cody Riley's
you were also talking, I think, about Washington and Oregon State back then.
That's a story for another day. But I'm telling you, Cody Riley, Tiger Campbell, the fact they've been in a Final Four, and they are a really good team. Like, they've beaten Villanova at home. They've beaten Arizona at home. They've been on the road at Marquette in front of a rabid fan base. Marquette is playing as well as anybody in the country. UCLA beat them handedly on that night. UCLA is a tough team. I don't look at the fact that Arizona lost at UCLA as they're no longer as good as we once thought. I think coming up next week, Jeff, when you talk about them playing at home against UCLA and home against USC, I think that will be more of a test, and they're good. Kerr clearly didn't have as good of a game last night, but we'll see how he responds. I would bet on him.
Randolph, Childress, what was your biggest takeaway from UCLA in that game? That they're back? That because I felt like people had forgotten about them because of their 3-week layoff,
right?
Because they didn't have fans in that loss to Oregon. Randolph, was that kind of your biggest takeaway too?
They seem like they had the longest pause of anybody in college basketball. It's like we almost forgot about them. You know, we went weeks without seeing them. So it was kind of like, all right, we saw them early in the year. We knew they were like a top 5 team, and then they just didn't play anybody. You know, they couldn't play. They were shut down. So then we go, and then again, they lose to Oregon at home, but they don't have the crowd. So we knew, we joked about it last week, that coming into this game, they were going to have fans. Like we knew they were going to take this game seriously. I don't question. I think this game was, we wanted to see more about how Arizona was going to look like. You know, we had seen games against UCLA and knew UCLA is going to be there in the end. Arizona, the only thing, the biggest question mark I have is, and we talked about this earlier, Sean, you mentioned this point guard play.
Yes.
Is it's just hard to advance and go as deep as you want to go if you don't have solid PG play. And that would be the only thing that I don't think anyone questions their talent, and they're not going to shoot 30% for the, they can have an off night shooting. I don't worry about it. But PG play is something that the only thing on their roster that really concerns me.
Sean, I'm with RC 100% on that with Kerr, especially after watching him last night. Now, again, he's got crazy swagger,
Yes,
swagger.
he does. Yeah.
The headband, the whole deal.
Jeff, I'm going to tell you guys this, like, he's a freshman. All right. So let's just categorize that. If you want to be fair in your judgment, the guy he was playing against last night, in my opinion, is the most underrated point guard in college basketball. I've coached against them for several years. Tiger Campbell gets very little respect for what he does for his team on offense, on defense. And Randolph, you know this, like, point guards step up in big games. When you watch Tiger Campbell in the biggest games on their schedule, he shows up. And then sometimes if he doesn't have a great game, he makes big plays at the end to win the game. And you know what? It was Kerr's kind of first time going against them. I'll bet on Kerr, though. His ability to shoot, his belief in himself. He's a very, very good and talented player. But is he a seasoned veteran? Is he in his third year, been there, done that? No. So if you want to question that, that's something I think that's easy to question. But don't be surprised when you watch him next week at home if he doesn't really, really bounce back. But let me say this. I believe that last night's game wasn't as much of an indictment on Arizona or any player or anything they did. Let's just give credit to Mick Cronin, his staff, and his team. They changed the game. They controlled the tempo. They played a very good defensive game against Arizona. Arizona has been a machine. Nobody has really stopped them. Last night was the first time that they ran into that. And then on offense, UCLA also controlled the game by trying to pick on matchups. It's a unique way of playing offense, but with their personnel and the way they do it, they're able to do that against virtually any team on their schedule. And they're a tough out. They're a tough matchup. And I thought their game plan, how the other part about UCLA's guys, like Randolph, you said it, they've been on this long, crazy pause, which I think almost took all of December. They've been stripped of their fans. Everybody quit talking about them. And last night they were playing a team that everybody was talking about. And guess what? Their pride, their toughness, I thought really shined through. So I'm going to look at last night's game as a real testament to UCLA and Mick and how good they are versus Arizona. We'll find out more in the next couple of weeks about Arizona, but those guys I think those are, to your point, Jeff, I think they're two outstanding teams.
Yeah, I do too. And I kind of, you're thinking like, all right, does Arizona belong in that elite 11? And that's kind of what I've called it so far, 11 teams that I think have separated themselves. But you're right. It's in a tough environment. Let's see what happens next when they go back to Tucson. And if they don't respond in Tucson against USC and UCLA, then we're probably putting them in that second tier. But certainly, again,
there'll be fans at that game.
Oh, hell yeah. Listen, I'm hoping my daughter and myself are two of those fans at that game. So we'll see.
Randolph, have you ever played in McHale Center?
I haven't.
It's such a unique place, man. It's the pageantry in the place, the 14,500. They love Arizona. Started a long time ago with Lute Olson, but it's also a very sophisticated crowd. Like, they don't turn on you very easily. If you're struggling, they rise up, and it's a special place. And I think it's the separator in the West, because unlike a lot of other places in the West, they just don't have that rabid fan base that guys like you playing at the Smith Center, playing at Cameron Indoor Stadium. Like, how about when you play Carolina, what it's like in Winston-Salem? It's not always like that in the West. And that's why that game, Jeff mentioned it, UCLA and Arizona, both really thriving. It's great to see that type of game.